Great. So tonight's session is about quality calls. And when I was looking through the initial questionnaire that Nick sent out in March, there were a few comments in there about quality calls and how do you differentiate the rules and philosophy, and just kind of walk through some of those things. So that this presentation is going to attempt to tackle that topic. A couple of housekeeping things. One, it'll probably run 45, 50 minutes tonight. I've got a referee Zoom call with our position coach in the COC at 9. This is starting at 8, so probably need to stop this at about 8:50 or so. Also, it's certainly meant to be a discussion, not necessarily just lecture. So either use the chat function or go ahead and unmute yourself and interrupt with questions that you have. That just helps with the discussion and all that, because some of the things I'll say, it might cause you to wonder, what am I talking about? So feel free to come in with a question if you've got it. So first, we'll go through a couple slides, and I've got a couple plays to watch about just to kind of hammer home these points. But first is, let's talk about what is the rules and the philosophy of those rules. And especially now, not just because we're all stuck at home, but it's the off season and we're taking a lot of rules tests. And those tests are great if you're someone that likes tests. Because tests, it's a little bit of a joke there, but tests can definitely help us understand the rules, because they make us dig deep into the rule book to find these exceptions or find the rule references or find what exactly the test question is talking about. However, rules are black and white. That's what they're written for, is to try to be as clear-cut, objective as possible. In an actual game, sometimes we have to apply the spirit of that rule or the philosophy of the rule, and that is much more gray. It's not as clear-cut. Sometimes we have to make decisions that could change week to week, which can be a little frustrating. That is a little bit difficult to operate. It's not everything is as clear as a touchdown is always 6 points. We know that, but sometimes a false start isn't a false start. And we have to operate in different modes. So when you're taking a test, you have to operate it as black and white, clear cut, and kind of throw out a lot of the philosophy. Because sometimes the test question, if we were to have it on the field, would come up with actually a different answer on that. So you have to understand those two different modes between taking tests to understand the rules and maybe applying those philosophies. Because otherwise, we certainly could be rule precise, but end up being wrong, or at least noticed for the wrong reasons. None of us want to be Mr. or Mrs. Rulebook. We want to be someone who is known to manage the game, manage the players, and can basically handle tough situations. We don't want to make any major rule errors. We certainly don't want 5 downs. We don't want to walk off a 7-yard penalty when it should be 5. But, a lot of times what will get us noticed is how we handle tough situations. So, technically, great way to think about it. If you ever have to answer a question with, well, technically, you're probably on the wrong path. So here's a question that we actually talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, I believe. You've got a runner, a running play tackled at the 50, and the line judge is working in the white, working in our own area, and notice that the head coach is in that area. So the line judge makes an adjustment, moves out onto the field to avoid the head coach to resume officiating. Teammate does not have any prior interference fouls in the game. What's the ruling? In the book, it's actually written as such. Because we have had to alter our path, this is a foul. And it's not just a sideline warning. It's a 15-yard, unsportsmanlike, non-player foul. That is what the rules tell us to do. So it's pretty clear, black and white. Even though we didn't make contact with the coach, we had to adjust ourself and our concentration on the game. You're reading a book, it certainly makes sense. In a game, what I would say our actual reading, don't call this. This is one of those cases where we could be precise and correct by the book, but it's really not going to win us any favors. And it may be an adjustment for those out there that are working high school ball. I've always kind of thought sideline warnings in high school football were great, because that was one of our few ways we could handle a sideline if they weren't paying attention to us. And after all, in high school football, there is no conference commissioner, there is no officiating supervisor other than the state director, that is going to have really our backs, or a coach is going to have to deal with during the week. In college, we all work for a conference, we all work for a supervisor, so the supervisor can help administrate things, and work with the college coaches, not necessarily us. So let the conversation be from our supervisor to the coach about their sideline decorum, and staying back, as opposed for a coach to then call the supervisor and to be upset about this sort of 15-yard flag, because really this just gets us noticed for the wrong reasons. It gets us noticed that we can't handle the sidelines. It gets us noticed that we're flag happy. Even though we might be correct by the rule, it's really tough for our supervisors to stand on. So here's an example of when you're taking a test, it's certainly one answer, but something I would strongly try to avoid. Now, granted, there is a place for calling a foul for sideline interference in the college game. But just like everything else, they could be there. If you run into a coach, if you knock over a coach, if you fall down, those are flags. Those are easy ones to say, coach, you were clearly in the way. But on an interception, a big momentum changing play, if you can step out on the field and avoid the bench altogether, that's how you manage the game. And if you watch a game on Sundays, you see this every time in the NFL. And when was the last time you saw a flag for sideline interference in the NFL? I certainly don't remember one. So just something else to think about. Here's another example. Last play of the half. Quarterback throws the ball to an end, who catches the ball at the B18, runs toward the goal line, and notices he's going to score, so he turns around, walks backward toward the end zone. As his body's on the goal line, he spikes the ball to the ground at the 1. Ball deflects into the end zone, where A6 recovers the ball. So this is not a fourth down. We have a touchdown, whether the original receiver scored a touchdown or a recovered. And you could have two distinct acts here on A2, one for taunting when he turned around, and the second for spiking the football. So you certainly could have an ejection here. Think about if that is what you would do in a game. My recommendation is, the actual ruling here is, we certainly want to have one unsportsmanlike, but probably you're going to make this one continual act if possible. Because again, to eject a player, for something like this is a little bit strong. Let's not be so technical as to split hairs on this. Now, granted, if he turns around at the 10, if there is a clear element of time and space and two very different acts, you're going to get support on that. We're going to get support for ejecting a player, but you just want to be careful about it. Even though these are two different forms of unsportsmanlike, you probably want to try to make them one. You don't want to be, again, someone who's out there just looking to get rid of players. So again, rules versus the philosophy, black and white versus something that's a little bit more gray. What's better for the game? Probably keeping this player in the game. It also goes for mechanics. So here's just your ABA type of play. Pass is intercepted by B22, returns the ball where he's hit and fumbles. So A17 now picks up the ball and returns to the A40, the original line of scrimmage where he's tackled. So the ruling is Team A's ball, 1st and 10, because it's ABA, and the game clock will start on the ready for play, and the play clock will be set to 40 seconds after the play. Mechanically, it'd be great if it happened like this. The play clock operator would set the clock to 40 seconds after this play is over and run it. We'd quickly assess that this is an ABA type situation and that team A is going to get a first down, and we'd wind the clock on the ready for play. That's what the rule is, and that's how you would answer a test question in that way. And specifically the play clock is something that could trip people up. In reality, this play might take a little bit more time to talk about on the field. And it may take more than those 10, 15 seconds we have as that play clock is getting closer to 25 or perhaps under 25. Likely, or very possibly, we would make an announcement on this play, perhaps do a more formal stoppage. Perhaps we need to reset the chains and it gets more complicated there. We also want to make sure that there was actually a possession change and all that. So it's kind of one of those things where on the field, probably this play clock is going to get set to 25 seconds because of the time it's going to take. So to show an example of that, we'll show some plays here. And I certainly refer you to the YouTube playlist that was sent out for all that. Most of these plays, you know, we'll see with technology if it comes in a little choppy or not. I don't think there's really that many plays that, you know, if the choppiness will affect it too much, because we're not going to talk about things that need a lot of clear motion. But just in case, if this is pretty bad, then we'll switch over to the YouTube version on that. So before I guess I start, any questions from anybody in the audience? No. Okay. So here's basically that last play in true form. The team in white is on offense. It's 2nd and 3. They throw a pass, intercepted.
Oh boy!
Here's
hit,
another interception. I think that's Teray Bryant.
And recovered again by the offense. So nice job here, mechanics by the line judge. We have a change of possession. Team A gets the ball, so Team A is either Team B will have the ball here at this pile or Team A. Either way, the team is going to be awarded a first down. Because of that, we stop the clock. So mechanically, that is correct. We stop the game clock here because one of these teams is getting awarded a first down. We have a conversation, you know, and the crew discusses, was there an actual possession by the defense or not? As we'll see here in the replays.
That's the third interception to just one
catch,
completion.
4 or 5 steps, and then hit. So clear possession by the defense, but always
right there
good to confirm on the field. Is that what we had? Because it's a bigger ruling there. You know, the play was 2nd and 3. So if we rule it, there was no possession by that defender, we'd have an incomplete pass, and it'd be 3rd down and 3. But since the defense gained possession and lost it back to the offense, now it's 1st and 10. So it could mean a big deal. So here's the same play coming to the bottom of the screen. So again, by rule, the play clock should be set to 40 seconds and ran after this play is over. But as you can tell, the crew takes a little bit more time just to talk about it, make an announcement. We go into an administrative stoppage, which means the play clock goes back up to 25 seconds. And then once we're all set, we wind both the game clock and the play clock at that point. And of course, we wind the game clock because Team A is snapping the ball for a first down. Okay. So we'll start to talk about a couple fouls. So I'll let this play go, and I'm not going to tell you what we're looking at, where the foul is, if there's a foul, or what the action is. So I'll just let this play go and see if you can determine where the foul
He's shown up in a bunch of ways.
Here's Zappe on 2nd and 10. Pressure coming from the edge. Flag comes in. That'll be a hold on
Hopefully
Houston.
he's chuckled with that because it was pretty obvious. And that's the point I wanted to start out with these plays on, is this is an obvious hold, as we'll see the replays here. And you're going to look at the top of the screen. 72 is our guilty party.
And you'll see it right here.
Good dip.
Yeah.
And then whoop.
Not a great.
Obvious hold, obvious takedown. There's no questions about it. And that really is the foundation of what quality calls are in our game. Something that obvious. So obvious, the TV announcers know right away what the flag was for. That everyone in the stadium knows exactly that needed to be a foul. That's where we want to start with our foundation. Quality calls are not getting those calls, those dream calls, those ones that only happen once a season. It's getting these calls that happen in every game and getting them right as close to 100% of the time as possible. A couple great rules of thumb is when you explain this, for us in the COC, we have to, write a report with every foul that we call, and the fewer words it takes you to describe the action, the better call it's going to be. This is simply a takedown by the right tackle. We don't need to get into a discussion about, well, his right arm started outside the frame. He tried to move it inside, but wasn't able to do that and kind of pulled on the defender slightly. There was a slight jerk. Once you start to get more than 2 sentences, it's probably not a great call. There are times you need to add explanations, sure. But if you can let the call explain itself, that's really going to help. And I'll flip it here, or at least I'll flip the perspective. What if this call was not made? How does that really affect the perception of the crew by the fans in attendance, by the players, by the coaches? This is something that has to get called. So, again, when you talk about quality calls, it's focusing on the ones that must get called every time. If this happened in, let's say your traditional line play, interior of the line, where no one really sees it, and you have that flag that comes out, well, I don't know what they got. Those can be lived with because no one really knows. But everybody sees this. Everybody in the crowd sees this. And if you don't call this, or if we don't call this, then our perception is just done. Because it's this severe of a call. So on that note, let's talk about mechanics on this, because certainly this is a referee's primary. The referee needs to get this. But what if the referee doesn't? And my point, and again, especially for working high school ball or D3 or D2, it's not always a certain that whoever we work with at any position is going to see what they should be seeing. So how can we officiate as a crew to get this? So let's just take a look at some initial keys, initial responsibilities. We've got our wings over here. The line judge is at the bottom of the screen. This is a double-double. So the back judge has got that guy. The headline judge has the slot receiver at the top. And the line judge has the back and all that. So our initial responsibilities, our initial receivers are accounted for. Also notice these two players are not pressed. So really what that's saying is that the officials at the top of the screen almost can go into zone fairly quickly. And I'm going to focus here on the line of scrimmage official at the top of the screen, because as we let this play, what is the line of scrimmage official really looking at if it's not the tackle? At this point, both of these receivers release down the field. Having your attention here is probably going to take this official out of the play, when really the best action to be looking at, the best action to be looking at is the action here at the line. That's what's going to help, because going to that point, if we miss this call, someone on the crew has to get it. So If we see that the referee just for whatever reason doesn't have a flag here, coming in from the line of scrimmage official to make sure we have that is going to be pretty important, again, for the whole perception of the crew, because it's just something we have to have. Now, I'm not saying, again, that the headline judge must get this, but someone on the crew does. And then this is one of those plays where if the referee misses it, it's probably going to take down one or two more officials on the crew, or maybe more, because that's just this bad of an action that has to get gotten. So officiate like a crew. We want to have, if possible, a couple sets of eyes on almost every foul action of the game. Think about it like basketball for the basketball officials out there. We all have primaries, but yet we all know kind of what's going on the court. You know, a lot of times we'll have a call by one of the other officials in basketball. We may not know exactly what's going on, but we certainly know those two players. And we have a good idea that there's probably a good foul call. Same thing can apply in football, even though we're on a much wider field. It's just end zone view to look for it. Obviously, with an eighth official with the center judge, it makes this a much easier get for the referee and much more on the hook for the referee to get, since it's the right tackle. But you know, no different if there were only 7 officials in that game. Similar play.
It's fine too, Ray. Top of the
Again,
screen
we're going to
here
focus on the right
Montana.
tackle.
We went to him last
Double.
time.
This time the line judge is at the top of the screen. You know, real similar play, and this is a great example of what I was just talking about, where the line of scrimmage official makes a very great call on this hold.
40-yard catch at the 2-yard line that set up the touchdown. Marcus Knight to the left of Snead from the shotgun. Pressure maybe from Weber. Now they back it off. Snead still facing pressure. Hoists this one up into traffic, and it is intercepted. Picked off by Eddie Heckard, and he has it down to the Montana.
Comes away with the INT.
Holding offense, number 64, apparently has declined. First down for Weber State.
You could just see that was bad news as soon as he...
So we'll see here the beginning of this hold. We're looking at these players right here.
That ball up, you're like, what is he thinking?
Well, he throws it up, and there's like 4 Weber State defenders in the area as well. Just can't get much on the ball. Can Snead and Heck.
We'll go to the coach's tape. So again, using the same initial responsibilities. Yes, it's a little easier that the back judge is shading over to that receiver for all that. These 2 receivers at the top of the screen are more pressed, so it is a little bit more important to stay with those actions for the deep officials here. And you can see on this wide angle really how great of a call this is by the line judge, because his view really gets blocked, but he still stays with the action that's most threatening, and gets the call there for a hold. And if there was an interception, obviously this would be a much more important call on this play. And here is, you know, a view from the end zone, which kind of puts a perspective on, you know, where my eyes, and I'll just talk about this one, were in my thought process on this play. Because, you know, the referee, especially in 7-person mechanics, you know, I've always thought I don't necessarily have one tackle or that tackle. I've got all these players because I have no idea what the threat is going to be. And because of all the motion that goes in there, you know, my eyes have to go to whatever threat I perceive as the most. And as this play develops, you quickly notice that I don't need to be here. You've got 4 offensive players to the defensive players. So my choice is either over here on the right or over here on the left. And this running back shoots out forward and starts to go low. And I'll say for referees, that's always one of those things that triggers your eyes to make sure you see the running back go low. You know, a running back going low will take us into a potential chop block, which we have to see. And also running back going low has a potential to maybe grab onto legs and make a hold in that way. So my eyes first go to this running back. You know, obviously he's one-on-one. That's from the front. That's totally fine and legal, but my eyes are there. Then I get to this action on the right side and go, that doesn't look good at all, but I didn't see the block at the start. So again, using just some basic principles there. If I didn't see the whole block, I've got to pass on it. And then I notice the quarterback is getting threatened. So I've got to come back over to that. So it's one of those where I see the flag come in and go, that's a great call, because I didn't see enough of it for myself to love it, but I knew something was probably bad there. And the line of scrimmage official stuck with his area. So, you know, he was able to help get that call. So good examples from plays 1 and 2 about why it's important to cover both those areas. And our last holding play for this set of plays is on this one. I want you to think, is this a good call? So we'll let this one play.
The sparks of new life for the boys in blue. Cofield trying to get to the outside, dragged down by 7 Wilson, flag.
So just as, you know, what I've talked about, was that easily noticed? Did you not know where it was? You know, just think to yourself, is this a call that you would make? Is this a good call? Yes or no?
The end.
Holding. Offense. Number 82. 10-yard penalty from the previous spot. Repeat. First down.
TV view here will show this pretty nicely if you didn't see it on that wide angle.
I think they called it right there on Ellison. Wilson made the play anyway, but that was the indication.
So, interested to hear some discussion on this. So, for those that are would like to open up your mics and let's talk. Is this a good call, and why?
Hey, Dave. It's Austin.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I think what you probably saw in this was the offensive player put himself in a bad position. He had really bad hand placement and probably went a little quick on it because it did jump out with 82. He had him kind of wrapped up, hooked him a little bit, but the defender kind of played through it and made the play. So probably not one we would want.
Okay.
In hindsight.
It's one opinion and good description. Anybody else with other thoughts? Good call, bad call, why?
Was Wally the grader on this game, Dave?
Wally was the great. Well, Wally was the evaluator, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's a good call then. You'd be no call if you don't call.
Yeah, hey Dave, this is Clee. I'm going into my second year in college, and this is a really good example of something on the field that looks, when it's going full time like this, it looks big to you if you're not used to seeing this. Because like Austin was saying, the offensive player got in really bad position there. And just with his arms, the way that it wrapped around, it looked like it was a hold. But like Austin said, he plays through it. And here, I mean, when we look at this angle, we look at it on this perfectly great TV angle. It you know, you can kind of see a little bit of restriction, not a whole lot, but it's definitely not something that we want because it's not really big and obvious enough for it to stick out on the original play for sure.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Anybody else have a contrarian view? No one wants to admit it. That's totally fine. So that's great. And thank you, Austin and Cleve, for your feedback on that and participation. And I would agree. This is not really a great call. You know, it's one of those that I wish I had back. And it's definitely well said. One, I went too quick on this. Because I see 82, I go to the point of attack, which is what we need to do on this play. I see 82, and I see this grab. I mean, it is clear as day. It's opened up. I mean, you don't see these shoulders turn this violently, this quickly, all that often in the game. And I just threw right on that action where I should have waited that half a second longer and thought, is this going to have an effect on the play? Now, granted, I'm making this decision at warp speed here. I'm thinking, well, that block is definitely going to have an effect. And, this running back who's been pretty good all game is just going to run through this giant hole here to the right. But the defender surprises everybody, gets through this block, and happens to tackle the runner, which is another part of this, is the defender made the tackle. So, some of it depends on which league you're working in and what supervisor you're working for. But, if the defender makes a tackle, usually it's a play that we want to pass on from having a flag. And that's, the feedback that I got on this is the defender made a tackle. Wasn't really much of an effect. Probably one that we would not want to have. Totally see the restriction, totally see the shoulders turn. But even though the runner may have gained an extra yard or two, if we're being generous because of this illegal action, it's not enough to say that there was an advantage, disadvantage, and it should have been a call. So if really on this play, looking back on it, what we need to do is take, again, that extra step, wait, be just a little bit more cautious, make sure that runner got through. If that runner breaks this open for 20 yards, it's a great call. But unfortunately, he got tackled by the same defender. Another minor point, and for those of you who play darts, this is a great dart. That's at least scoring some points near the bullseye there. The problem is it hits a player. There's no need to wing in the flag. So this is, again, part of that, self-critique that we all need to do. This flag could have easily landed 5-7 yards shorter than it did, and obviously it's still a foul. So there's no need to get a hold at the line of scrimmage or behind line of scrimmage near the action. You just don't want to hit a player. Obviously, if you're really good and you get it into the face mask, you can hit a player in the face, and that'd be pretty embarrassing or worse. So just something minor there. I'll add to that.
And a third down.
Okay.
Hey, I got a question, Dave.
Yes.
This is forward. How many, as a crew chief, how many wave offs do you consider too many for the crew to have in a game?
That's a great question. I'd say during the game, I don't want to say it's unlimited, but I wouldn't consider it. You look back on the game through a post evaluation. Once you get two are fine. A third is starting to get a little sketchy about what are we doing. But more than that, there's definitely some sort of problem you have to figure out. But in the middle of the game, you need to get every call right. And I guess you could also say you could have 6 wave offs in a game, but if that 7th one comes in there and it needs to be waved off, then wave off the flag because you need to get it right. But from looking at it retroactively, if you're waving off, more than 3 flags on a game, something's not right. So someone's just breaking down mechanically, judgment-wise, or we need to have an issue, a discussion on the crew. So that's a really good question.
Hey, Dave, this is Frank.
Yeah.
Let me kick in here on his question. I think it depends on what we're waving them off for. If
True.
we're waving them off for having we've called offensive pass interference, where the ball was caught in or behind the neutral zone, the deep official throws that, and we pick those kind of flags up. We can have 100 of those because those are hard for the deep guys to pick up that yardage. If we're having a lot of was that a hold or not, and they're picking those up, then we better not have more than 0 or 1. So it depends upon what we're picking up.
Excellent point. Thanks, Frank. All right, switching now to OPI. The next 2 plays we'll talk about OPI. So, again, officiating in this play is a crew, not necessarily our responsibilities. The player that we're going to look at is the left tight end here. So, we're in a double-double formation, line judge at the top of the screen. It's technically the back judge's man. And we're going to watch this play develop and think about, is this OPI or not?
Situation here for Plitt in his Ball State offense.
Walter Fletcher in for Caleb Huntley. Crossing route. Touch.
So let that one play again.
Offense.
Walter Fletcher in for Caleb Huntley. Crossing route.
Right in the middle of the play.
Riley Miller, late flag at the 5-yard.
Pressure here. Watch at the end
I
of
don't
that
really
play.
see much on this angle.
Pass interference. Offense. Number 88. Wow. 15-yard penalty from the previous spot. Repeat. Third down. These big plays have been a point of emphasis by the officials, Michael. Haven't they? They have been.
Gets nice support there by the TV commentators. So why this play, I think, is a great call is it's not the back judge who calls it. It's not the line judge who calls it. It's the head linesman down here at the bottom of the screen. You can see him actually seeing that and about ready to throw here on this one. So the head linesman, this is not his, his initial key is, or his initial action, I believe, is the player who actually catches the ball, which is why it helps him taking a peek on this. But it really stresses, we need to look for more than one player on these plays and officiate the action correctly. Because, this is one of those calls that, obviously it's a huge play. It's not a scoring play, but it definitely has an impact. It definitely creates an advantage. That tight end is not trying to necessarily run a route. He's seeking the defender out. He knows what he's doing, gets in the way, and causes that interference, causes that illegal rub for the receiver who catches the ball. So really nice job here by the headline judge to get this. Clear, obvious. Those are the ones that we need to get. There's no really description, a long description that we need to provide. And since it's a scoring play, these are more important to be correct, because if they're incorrect, if we're guessing at all, we don't want to have a flag here, because obviously that's going to upset the coach. But, this is just as important because it's solid, it's there, and the team that was scored on would be upset if we didn't have a flag. So, you hear these messages, sometimes you want to say, don't throw your flags. Well, that's not necessarily the case. We need to throw them if they're there. We just need to make sure they're there and all that. Another OPI play to talk about, and this was, again, I think another example of excellent officiating, because the official off his initial responsibility for this.
And a reverse it. They got Christian Watson coming back. He wants to throw. That's touchdown. There's a flag down right at the goal line. This one's called
Offense, number 82. 15-yard penalty for the previous.
But the tight end. Yeah, Ellefson made the catch, but the call is against him.
The senior from Holly, Minnesota.
I wasn't sure if there was a TV view of that one or not. But what we're going to look at the action on the bottom of the screen and see what happens. So if we look at initial responsibilities, side judges with that man, field judge was with that receiver. We got two tight ends. So, kind of a power formation on that. Headline judges at the bottom of the screen, which means back judges there. Those are our initial responsibilities. So again, this is the original. This is the original player of the side judge, but that's not the player who fouls on this play, which is, again, you have to open up your field of vision on this. There's the foul. I mean, that's a clear OPI and a big one. And that player, could get lost on a play like this. We've gone into zone and we've switched exactly perfectly because the back judge is looking at the middle of the field. The side judge really has this matchup. I did that again. Yeah, the side judge has this matchup right here. The headline judge is kind of stuck. Does the headline judge look here, or does the headline judge look in there? And we've all been there. You kind of make that decision. What am I looking at? What am I supposed to be looking at? And the quarterback starts to get under pressure. The play kind of breaks down. The important thing as a crew, someone sees this action, but it's a pretty overt shove, get out of my way type action there by the receiver, frees him up for a touchdown. This is a solid call. So this is, again, there's nothing too fancy about this. Everyone sees this when you look at it on film. It speaks for itself. Those are the ones to focus on. Not sure we see a whole lot here from the end zone angle. Mechanically, you see the end of the push there. Good job here. The side judge is the official who threw the flag. There's a touchdown. So mechanically, since you've thrown the flag, it's on the offense. You're not going to signal touchdown. You're just going to signal stop the clock.
Spencer Wade.
Next couple plays are a little bit more technical in nature. Look at the offense. Make a decision. Does the offense have 4 in the backfield or 5 in the backfield?
Into the defensive end
So the question really is, we've got 4 back here. Is this player at the top of the screen, is he on or off? That's what I want you to think about.
The return motion.
So on this play, we ended up calling an illegal formation on this. And we'll go into the formation here. He's not really in great formation. He's not lined up too well. And my point of including this one is this is by the book illegal formation. It was supported, although I would say not like easily supported. It was kind of, I don't really know about this one, but yeah, we'll go with it. You've probably been working with them all game. And there have been a couple warnings earlier. But this isn't a foul to really make your living on this. He could be on. The defender's pressing him anyway. He's not so far off. What's really the advantage from a formation? Illegal formations, I know I personally, it's one of those pet peeves for me. It's a game interrupter for the most part, unless something is really lined up incorrectly. In each conference, each supervisor is going to have different opinions. So I'll definitely put that disclaimer out there. How much you're stressed about formation or not. You could look at this in April or in May and say, yeah, that's a foul for illegal formation. You're actually in games. This is really in that gray area of, if you can, try to get them up on the line of scrimmage. You might get supported, you might not. And it's just not where you want to make your living on for something like that, at least in my opinion. One of our favorite calls of the year last year. So we'll see. But as the offense gets set, is there a problem with anything that you see here on the screen?
Looks like the whiteout at the bottom is in the neutral zone.
Looks like the whiteout at the bottom is the neutral zone. One of we labeled this the crew saver from last year. Look at the line of scrimmage, or look at this offensive player down here. It is probably lined up over the football. Is this a call that you really want to make? Yeah, probably not. You certainly want to try to help move the wide receiver back if you can. But you see this all the time in whether it's Sunday, Saturday games. If you, as the line of scrimmage official, just take a half step to your left, and now you can see the football, we're gonna be fine. You still want to make mention to this player after the play to line up on you or make sure that they're not off sides. But calling encroachment here, which is what we did, again, too technical, not what you want. It's not what you want in any college game, let alone with number 1 versus number 3. But just something to keep in mind there. So again, you look, the line of scrimmage official doesn't really do anything, kind of looks to the left, and really was talked into this one by the coaches at the bottom of the screen. And that's what happened here on this, but not really a quality call.
Down passes. He's He's got the Panthers looking at a second and
Going
4
on
now
a similar
from
theme.
their own 32-yard line, 33.
And this one, I don't know how good the video quality is, but when you look at this one on YouTube, what you're going to want to watch is this player, the left tackle. And what we call here is a false start.
And we've got a whistle.
And it's pretty tough to tell. If you go into super slow motion, one nice thing with these video systems is you can kind of go frame by frame, which is what I'm attempting to do right now. So I'm not sure how the quality is on your end, but you see right now his body starts to rise. If I click 4 more times, now you see the center start to move the ball, and that's what signals the start of the snap, which we only see on slow motion. So yes, technically the offensive player did move before the snap. It's very tight. It really takes looking at film to help train our eye on the field what is a false start and what is not. Because this is not the NFL. There's a different standard certainly on Sundays than what we have, whether it's Division I or Division II, Division III, NAIA, or even high school. This is too close. It's too technical. And our grader said that on this game. This is not a good call for a false start. It's just too close. So on the field, you kind of get that sense of, I think he moved early, or maybe he moved early, or certainly he moved first.
I think the left tackle moved a little quick.
When you look at this on film, it's actually a lot more close to the snap than it looks like. So, in real time, is this really a quality call? Not really. We're not paid to call the most false starts in the league. We're not paid to get this pristine. For everyone watching this game in the stands, they probably don't notice that one any better. And that's kind of the point I want to make on that. And the best way to train your eye is when you see examples like these on film, and that will help you on the field get a lot more comfortable. I'll tell you, during the season, I probably have 12 to 15 plays that I get a little bit queasy in my stomach as far as that may have been a false start. And then you look at it on a film and you're like, no, that they either timed it correct, or it was a little bit late, or I should say the player moved a little bit early, but it was certainly within the level that was wanted for a legal play, or it's just a case of that player just moved first. Sometimes that happens where the center will snap the ball and everyone else kind of misses the snap counter, gets a slow start, but one player times it pretty well and just moves first. And that can be tricky. So you have to, again, just make sure you're certain about what you're calling there. Just not much of a differentiation on that.
Today does have
Here's
5 catches for 68 yards, but I mean,
what we called here is an illegal snap for kind of moving the ball around, and you don't really have a great camera angle of the ball, but take a just look at the defenders. Do any defenders react?
Does have 5 catches for 68 yards, but I mean,
no defender jumps into the neutral zone. No defender reacts like he did something weird with the ball. So it kind of gives you the evidence that this really wasn't that big. By rule, the snapper can't move the ball forward and can't jerk the ball around on the ground before the snap. But really, we're going to allow them to do something with the football as long as it doesn't really bring the defense over. In this case, there's just nothing here. And that's the umpire's primary responsibility. So why is the line of scrimmage official calling this and not the umpire? That is a question right there to ask. And even on the field, the umpire was like, what are you calling? But the headline judge wanted to stay with the call, and we went with it. And unfortunately, it was ruled incorrect because there's just nothing here. So just an example of too technical. I think this is a good play to end on, and this has to do with an eligible downfield, because these are really tricky. And certainly, depending on where you work, who you work for, you know, how tight do we want to call these linemen 3 yards down the field is always a tough one. But we're snapping here from the 43.
Company. Stack 3 wide receivers to that left side.
And whenever you see this, it again gets you to think about, oh no, that doesn't look good, because this player is now 10 yards downfield and the receiver, I think, just caught the ball. So it looks odd. It looks unusual. You got a big, heavy guy 10 yards downfield. You have to think that he's downfield illegally. But when we look at this tape, again, we're snapping from the 43. Ball's out, you know, the quarterback's just now releasing the ball, and our player in question is right there at the 46. So he's right at 3 yards. Maybe he's breaking the 3-yard plane by rule, and I know they want us now to enforce this very strictly, that, you know, he is right. This should be a foul. It's tight. On this, you know, especially D2, D3 high school, you want to put this player or not, high school is different altogether. So forget that analogy. But for D2, D3, NAIA, you want to have this player 4 yards downfield or more at the time of the throw, you know, to be sure that this is an eligible downfield. Because I've made the mistakes being on the line of scrimmage, and I know a lot of people, I think this is one of our most missed calls is, you know, we don't time correctly when this quarterback throws the ball and where the lineman is at the time of the throw, because we usually pick up the lineman now when the ball is at or above where we were looking over the lineman. So you see now this player who's 4 now, almost 5 yards, and you think he's downfield, but we didn't necessarily process him completely or correctly at the time the ball was thrown. And those are tough. And again, it takes a lot of looking at film to train your eye for a game. It's a different way of maybe learning this and all that, but it really goes to the point of there's no need to be technical on this. You know, and especially as you look at how this play kind of carries out, this player doesn't do anything. So, you know, there's really no advantage at all on this play. It's certainly okay to write this one down, to look at it later, and you can kind of see, was this a bad miss or kind of technical? So if you don't throw this flag, probably, you know, especially with this result of this play, no one looked at this, only you. And that's just goes to the importance of self-evaluation after the fact. So those are the plays that I had for tonight. And like I said, I got to run here in a few minutes, but if there are any questions that anybody has before we leave for tonight.
Hey, Dave. It's Austin. You had kind of briefly touched on foul write-ups earlier. Do you have any other tips for write-ups other than just being concise?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, you're going to get a lot of guidance from, depending on the league that you're working in, the crew chief that you're working for, and the supervisor that you're working for. You know, I've had some supervisors who just don't want any write-ups whatsoever. If you didn't call it, it's not a foul, unless it was a game-changing play or something that had a critical impact to the outcome of the game, and then there'd be a write-up. And there'd be other supervisors that at least said they would like a lot of write-ups. So it does take a little bit of time and experience to learn what to write up and then how much to write up for calls that you didn't make. You know, lean on the veterans in your conference certainly to get more advice.
Well, I guess that's it, Dave. I think I speak for everybody. I want to say thank you for the presentation tonight. We all really appreciate it. I know you have to run, but I'm going to wrap up a couple of things here. So for everyone's benefit, thank you. Yeah, standing ovation from wherever you're at. The only thing I wanted to see, everybody, you can see the upcoming schedule of presentations. please, if you think you might have something that you want to present on, don't hesitate to go to the link and sign up. We've got presentations pretty much through June the 7th, week of the 7th. I may try something here in a couple of weeks where I ask people to send in one play that they'd like to discuss with the group and do something similar to what Dave did, but where we can just kind of bounce around to everybody and try to do that once or twice before the season starts. So be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, guys, we'll do the SEC first 7 quizzes on Monday. Jerry Valentine's got a presentation. You make the call presentation on holding next Wednesday. And then we'll just kind of go from there. The quiz answers for our group will come out on Friday morning. But otherwise, guys, thanks for your time tonight and enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Great job, Dave. Thank you.
Great. Glad it went well. You're welcome. All right.
Enjoy your
Gotta go.
I'll see you.
Thanks.